Welcome to History Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: I logged on to 10,000 followers, how sex talk created a TikTok star. Tim Wakefield, pitcher who helped Boston break the curse, dies at 57. College football shoots into October, with plenty of highlights to come. After years of fighting City Hall, can the activist behind Olivia Chow's victory now make the system work for her? How a Trump train attack on a Biden bus foreshadowed January 6 and echoed bloody history. I logged on to 10,000 followers, how sex talk created a TikTok star. The Sydney Morning Herald. Esme Louise James, a PhD candidate at Melbourne University, has gained millions of followers on TikTok for her videos on the history of sex. James, who refers to herself as a sex historian, began creating short videos on the subject after seeing a fellow academic doing the same during the 2020 lockdown. Her videos cover a range of topics, including the history of the dildo and early methods of contraception, and have gained her a large following on TikTok and other social media platforms. James has now published a book called Kinky History, which explores history's saucy secrets and features research from her mother, a statistician. The book is rooted in serious research but is written in a playful and accessible style. James hopes that her work will help people better understand gender identities and contribute to the discourse around sexuality and gender. She believes that history shows that we can eventually return to a more accepting mindset towards gender and hopes that her work will contribute to that progression. Tim Wakefield, pitcher who helped Boston break the curse, dies at 57. New York Times. Tim Wakefield, knuckleball pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, died last Sunday of brain cancer, aged 57. Wakefield played a critical late-innings relief role in the team's winning of its first World Series championship in 86 years in 2004. Wakefield won Major League Baseball's Roberto Clemente Award in 2010, and after retirement from the game worked as an analyst for Red Sox games for NESN. Last week, the former Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling revealed to his podcast listeners that Wakefield and his wife, Stacy, had cancer. College football shoots into October, with plenty of highlights to come. Washington Post. The University of Notre Dame has continued its strong start to the college football season, with a 4th down and 16 conversion sparking a 95-yard scoring drive and a dramatic 32-29 win over Duke University. Notre Dame quarterback Sam Hartman scrambled and threw a pass to an open receiver to keep the drive alive and set up a winning touchdown. Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman praised Hartman's composure and experience, noting that the moment was not too big for him. Notre Dame has yet to lose a game this season, but faces tough challenges in the coming weeks against Louisville and Southern California. The win over Duke was reminiscent of Notre Dame's earlier narrow victories over Florida State and Toledo, in which they won by a combined total of just 4 points. Notre Dame is regarded as one of the most successful college football programs in history, with 11 national championships and a winning percentage of more than 73%. After years of fighting City Hall, can the activist behind Olivia Chow's victory now make the system work for her? The Toronto Star. Michael Hay, chief of staff to Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, is being hailed as one of the city's most effective progressive organizers. Hay has a history of activism, which includes advocating for issues such as sexual assault and violence against women while in high school. She has also worked for the Toronto Environmental Alliance and directed Jagmeet Singh's successful run for the federal NDP leadership. Hay's role as chief of staff is a new challenge for her, as she is now running the most powerful office at City Hall. She will have a significant impact on the city's major issues, such as the budget crisis, housing emergency, and negotiations with other levels of government. Hay is known for her ability to bring people together for a cause, and she plans to continue using this approach in her new position. While Hay has many supporters who praise her passion and political savvy, she also has critics who claim she is adept at sowing division when it serves her political ends. Despite these criticisms, Hay remains committed to her belief that policies that improve people's lives come from mobilizing communities, and she sees her role as an opportunity to help realize Chow's vision for a more equitable city. How a Trump train attack on a Biden bus foreshadowed January 6 and echoed bloody history. The Guardian. An op-ed by Diane McWhorter in The Guardian draws parallels between the attack on a Biden campaign bus by Trump supporters in Texas prior to the 2020 election and the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. McWhorter argues that the lack of response from law enforcement in the Texas incident foreshadowed the inaction that allowed the Capitol attack to occur. She compares this to historical instances of violence, such as the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham in 1963, where law enforcement also failed to intervene effectively. McWhorter suggests that the FBI's inaction in both cases is indicative of institutional blind spots and choices that prioritize political expediency over taking action against domestic terrorism. The incident in Texas involved a Trump train of motorists that harassed the Biden-Harris campaign bus on the highway, engaging in dangerous driving maneuvers and intimidating behavior. The FBI confirmed it was investigating the incident at the time, but no local arrests were reported. McWhorter argues that had the participants in the Texas incident been Muslim or non-white, the FBI's response might have been different. She points out that the lack of action against the attackers on the bus may have emboldened Trump supporters to carry out the Capitol attack. McWhorter concludes by expressing concern that the division and hate in the country have only widened since January 6. She notes a quote from one of the participants in the Texas incident, who said, "We have transitioned." While the context of the quote is unclear, McWhorter interprets it as a reference to a shift toward more extreme and apocalyptic beliefs. She suggests that this mindset, combined with institutional inaction, could lead to further violence in the future. Indigenous Australians split over voice vote despite memory of colonial horror. The Guardian. Tasmanian Aboriginal people are calling on Australians across the country to vote yes in the upcoming referendum to establish an Indigenous voice in the country's constitution. The proposal has been backed by the government and is supported by a majority of Indigenous voters. However, it has faced opposition from the leadership of the Liberal and National opposition parties. The proposal would establish an elected body to advise the National Parliament on policies affecting Indigenous people. The referendum requires a simple majority of all voters and for a majority of at least 4 out of 6 states to approve the measure. Polls initially showed over 60% of voters in favor of the proposal, but support has declined in recent weeks. However, the Yes campaign remains ahead in Tasmania, the only state where this has consistently been the case. The referendum will be held on October 14. The Great Turn Inward. Foreign Policy. In her book Against the World, Anti-Globalism and Mass Politics Between the World Wars, historian Tara Zahra explores the rise of anti-globalist movements in the interwar period. Zahra argues that these movements, which sought self-sufficiency and turned away from global trade and free movement of people, were driven by mass politics. She draws parallels between these movements and present-day discontentment with global integration, suggesting that anti-globalist populism is often an elite project rather than a grassroots movement. Zahra examines various examples of anti-globalist policies and movements, including the internal colonization efforts in Italy and Austria, the restrictions on immigration in the United States, and the autarkic experiments in Germany. She highlights the flaws and failures of these attempts at self-sufficiency, showing that the goal of complete withdrawal from the world was never achieved. While Zahra acknowledges the criticisms of globalization and the need for a better kind of globalization, she cautions against assuming that citizens are inherently against the world or clamoring for autarky. She argues that the choices citizens make depend on the kind of globalization they are offered, and that leaders must demonstrate political will in shaping global connections. She suggests that a muscular industrial policy or a bold Green Deal, for example, can coexist with engaging with the world. And that's a wrap for today's news. We covered a range of topics, from a TikTok star who gained millions of followers by talking about the history of sex, to the passing of Tim Wakefield, a Boston Red Sox player who helped break the team's curse. We also discussed the ongoing success of the University of Notre Dame's football team, the rise of a progressive organizer in Toronto, the alarming parallels between the attack on a Biden campaign bus and the January 6 Capitol attack, the upcoming Indigenous voice referendum in Australia, and the historical context of anti-globalist movements. Now, let's dig a little deeper into these stories. First, we have Esme Louise James, the sex historian who became a TikTok star. It's amazing how she turned her passion for history and sex into a successful platform that educates and entertains millions of people. I guess you could say she really knows how to log on to 10,000 followers. But on a serious note, her work is important because it helps break down taboos and contributes to a more open and accepting conversation about gender and sexuality. Moving on to sports, we mourn the loss of Tim Wakefield, a key player in the Boston Red Sox's historic 2004 World Series win. His legacy will forever be etched in the hearts of Red Sox fans. And speaking of sports, the University of Notre Dame continues to impress on the football field. Their recent win over Duke University showcased their resilience and ability to come out on top in close games. But they'll face tougher challenges in the coming weeks, and we'll be eagerly watching to see if they can maintain their winning streak. In the world of politics, we discussed the rise of Michael Hay, the chief of staff to Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow. Hay's background in activism and her ability to bring people together make her a powerful force for change. But as with any influential figure, she has her share of critics. Despite the challenges, Hay remains committed to her vision of a more equitable city, and will be watching closely to see how she navigates the political landscape. Shifting gears to the United States, we examined the disturbing parallels between the attack on a Biden campaign bus by Trump supporters and the January 6 Capitol attack. Diane McWhorter's analysis sheds light on the systemic failures that allowed both incidents to occur. It's a stark reminder that we need to address the root causes of division and hate in our society to prevent further violence. In Australia, Indigenous communities are divided over the upcoming referendum to establish an Indigenous voice in the country's constitution. While the proposal is supported by a majority of Indigenous voters, it faces opposition from certain political parties. The outcome of the referendum will have significant implications for Indigenous rights and representation, and it's important for all Australians to engage in the conversation and make their voices heard. Finally, we explored the historical context of anti-globalist movements. Tara Zara's book reminds us that the push for self-sufficiency and a turn away from global integration is not a new phenomenon. It's driven by mass politics and often championed by elites. However, Zara also emphasizes that citizens' choices depend on the kind of globalization they are offered. Leaders have the power to shape global connections in a way that benefits everyone, and it's crucial that they demonstrate the political will to do so. So, that's a wrap on today's news. I hope you enjoyed our journey through these diverse topics. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions or insights to share? The floor is yours, my fellow observers of the 6 Degrees world. What's on your mind? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6 Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6 Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6 Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6 Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6 Do Brief via email.